Hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 64554633728, and I wanted to talk about the similarity between some of the things that are happening now in the world and what would have happened about 100 years ago. It's funny, well, it's not really funny, I probably didn't see it, but I think in 1919, the world would have had a bout of the Spanish flu, which killed a large number of people. And if someone has run a story about it or a headline somewhere that I haven't seen, maybe it is that we just forgot that such a really horrible thing happened. There was a lot of secrecy around it, as far as I remember from it was a podcast that I listened to. It's these two guys, they do good podcasts, and they were saying that it was also around the time of the First World War, and different people didn't, different countries didn't want other countries to know how bad, how things were going, so they didn't really let on that, hey, we have so many deaths because of it. And of course, they didn't have as much a priori knowledge as we would have in terms of how to prevent diseases and keeping good records and all this other stuff. So particularly when the virus or the cold Spanish flu hit the US, they don't really have very good records about it. I think there was a guy probably in the heartland of the US, and I think that of course, as the name goes, Spanish flu, maybe Spain was one of the few countries that would have actually let on that something was happening and it was bad. So that might be the reason why it got that name, but obviously it affected people all around the world. The problem is, of course, that right now we are more interconnected than ever, but at the same time, the flu is still invisible. We can't see it. And even though we know it's being transmitted and we take precautions to do that, one of the things that we really should be afraid of is that whatever is coming that is as virulent as the measles, where 90% of the people who come in contact with someone who has the measles are going to get it. And people who have the measles can spread it a lot before they even show signs of having it. If we have something like that, that's as virulent as that, but as deadly, let's say, as Ebola, I think that would pretty much be the end of us. The good thing about a lot of diseases is that they can't be transmitted before symptoms begin to show. So, it's easy to track. Okay, when he was showing symptoms, who would he or she have been around or anything like that. Another similarity to 100 years ago is a trade war. There was a trade war around this time, 100 years ago, that exacerbated the stock market crash of in the US. And right now we have a huge, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but when I look at graphs of the US stock market, I see, it going like one of those exponential curves kind of thing. And that's really unusual. I've never seen anything like it. I think between the AI trading systems that they have and the fact that so many people have access to the stock market and it's easy to trade, that between those two things, when whatever goes up must come down. And a lot of what is causing this excitement about the future and about the stock market, that's driving the stock market, is a lot of unsustainable things. People, wherever you look, number one, the GDP of these countries are not growing that fast. I just saw a headline that said that a number of countries are on the brink of recession. Number two, a lot of what we are, a lot of this GDP is just junk that people have in their garages, and junk that people have become in debt to get, stuff that they don't really need. And of course, like high housing prices in different areas, and everything that goes with, every time you buy a new house you have to fill it with stuff, right? New furniture, new whatever. And in a lot of places those housing prices are not sustainable. They're housing bubbles. And even if you look in China and places like those, it's shoddy work. People have to buy. Like if you're going to get married in China, apparently you have to have a house. So there's all these people trying to get houses and so that they can be worthy to buy, to get married. And yeah, we are headed for a big crash. I think it's inevitable. I mean, for one thing, at least in the US, they have had, this is one of the longest periods they've gone without having a stock market crash. And the higher you, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, right? So, and especially when people's savings are not going up, and when wages are not going up, and when, yeah, and there are things that, would prevent an immediate crash and might allow some kinds of stability, or like, for example, immigration. If people from lesser developed countries could move to more well-developed countries, that way, number one, those aging populations in the more developed countries, they'd be able to pay for those aging populations rather than having a senior heavy population where you're going to need resources to take care of people medically, and you're going to need people to take care of them. GDP is going to go down because there are not as many people, not as many young people working and buying houses and so on. And plus that, whatever remunerations that immigrants would send back to their country would allow people in their country to buy more goods and services from more developed countries. That would, raise the standard of living in those countries, and at the same time it would provide income and GDP growth for more wealthy countries. But while that would be good, people don't want people to immigrate to their countries. They don't like the changes. They don't, and change is a part of life. Even if it's not foreigners that are changing things, it would be young people changing things. Like everybody hated Elvis, right? Or at least older people. A lot of older people didn't approve of that sort of stuff. People didn't like the Beatles. Older people, I mean, who wants to see their teenagers screaming? So, but Brexit and trade wars and anti-immigrant sentiment, the very things that are needed are the things that people don't want. So there's been a run-up of stock markets, I would imagine, around the world, including the US, and there's going to have to be, the pendulum is going to swing in the opposite direction at some point. And I think in between these aging populations that people have, the rise of populism and things like that, as well as stock market run up and this long period without a recession in the US, I think things are gonna go, and between the trade war, which is going to reduce GDP, and this corona, to me, hysteria, I would say that we're looking, whatever the chances were of a recession this year, I think they've gone up. Between the trade war, yeah, Trump and Xi are supposed to have resolved something, but it isn't. It isn't resolved. As far as I know, it's just the beginning. And Trump still has different things going on with other countries. and now the coronavirus, and now we were already looking for a recession to begin with. So, I mean, it wasn't certain, but so yeah, these are similarities between things that happened about 100 years ago. And the Great Depression, maybe things are not going to be quite that bad. I think there are a lot of reasons why we can expect things not to be as severe as they were, because part of the reason is because of how interconnected we are and how information passes, so that we are aware of the fact that diseases might be spread, and that unfortunately is what is causing some of the hysteria. I mean, this thing is barely much worse than flu season, but it's new. And you know what? It kind of reminds me of an immigrant. So the flu, if you call it the flu, no problem. You know, lots of people die, millions of people die every year of the flu. But whatever, not a big deal. You call it a coronavirus, which has flu-like symptoms and has been around on all sorts of cruise ships all over the place for like the last 10 years. You know, I heard about a coronavirus like maybe 5 years ago, that when it was on a cruise ship, and how easy it was for people to get it and stuff. So yes, this is a new coronavirus. But still, there are supposedly like 100 different microorganisms that cause flu-like symptoms. And we all, you know, it's a flu, right? We don't really think about it. But this is a new one. This is like an immigrant, you know. This is not the old one devil that we're used to. This is a new devil. And better the old devil, because the new devil is really similar to the old devil, but it's a new devil. And of course we need to freak out about this and completely overreact and cause a lot of problems. I can't see how we're going to avoid a recession. I really can't see how that can be the case when there is a shutdown and so many people in China and work is being disrupted. I mean, for one thing, China is a major source of revenue, like selling stuff in China, and there are so many companies whose manufacturing has been disrupted as a result of this. And to me, needlessly, but you know, if your employees are freaking out, what are you supposed to do? But there's so many companies whose bottom lines are going to be affected by this, that there is no way that this is not going to affect and cause a recession. And it's going to be like dominoes, because to begin with, it isn't over. It's probably going to get worse. And if we are freaked out now, what happens when it hits and it's widespread and it's rampant in the US, in Africa, in South America, in Europe? I can't see how it's going to stop. I mean, it's pretty much almost just like a regular cold. And a regular cold is unstoppable. That's why they come out with vaccines every year. And still people die anyway. So it's going to get worse. It's already bad now, and it's probably going to affect the bottom line. As well as people had expectations of a recession anyway. People have very little savings. People financially, wages have not gone up for the longest period of time. So the only way to go is down. And we have a long way down, especially because of how high the stock market has run up. We have a long way down to go. So tell me what you think. Wish me lucks. You can like or unlike. You can comment and tell me why you did either. You can subscribe if you want, or you can share my stuff. All right, peace.